Hello, welcome to the Saints Insider Podcast. I'm Patrick McGee. I'm filling in for Zach Ewing. He's getting in some quality family time down in Florida, and I'm joined by Rod Walker, Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson. That's Rod to my right, Jeff below me, and then we have Luke down there in the corner. We're not normally going to record these podcasts on a Friday, but if there was a Friday to do a podcast, it was a good one because it felt like a week's worth of, if not a month's worth of news happened in the course of about 4 hours. Luke, you were there whenever Alvin spoke this morning. I guess he kind of set this up. The news coming that he's going to be suspended 3 games. What did you kind of come away with? Just the big takeaways from what Alvin had to say this morning.
Look, I think Alvin said exactly everything he needed to say. He was contrite. He was apologetic. He knows he made a mistake. And he wanted to fess up to that and own up to it, and said he's going to be better. And look, I think the Alvin Kamara that we saw, on that video from that Vegas fight is not the Alvin Kamara I think a lot of us know. I think a lot of us were surprised when we saw that happen. And it was weird last year when he was kind of dodging us and not wanting to talk about it because it just felt so out of character for him. Obviously, like there are legal reasons why he's doing that. But to see him back out there today, speaking freely about it and feeling freed by this thing being in his past, I think it hit all the right notes for me. Obviously, you never want to see somebody who a lot of people look up to involved in something like that, but he said, look, I did it. I'm ashamed of it. I'm not happy about it. I hate that it happened, but it happened, and I'm here to own up to it and move forward. I think that was a really good thing from him today.
Jeff, the 3 games, does that feel like a bit of a best case scenario for the Saints? How would you say that three game situation looks?
Yeah, I think it validated the decision to go up and see Roger Goodell. Whatever the jet fuel that Gail Benson had to spend in her private jet to get him up there, I think was worth it because I think 3 games, any Saints fan, any Saints coach or teammate would have probably welcomed that. 19 months ago when all this first went down. I mean, a lot of people thought minimum 6 games, maybe half a season, and to get 3 games, I think was almost a best case scenario. And look, I think his decision to go up there, I'm not sure if it played a part in it, but I don't think it could possibly have hurt in any way. And that takes a lot of initiative. It takes a lot of gumption, frankly, to go up and fall on the sword in front of your big boss, if you will. Not a lot of people would do that, and not a lot of people have ever done it. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think it speaks to the maturity that he's shown here in the wake of this, because I really believe this incident was something of a wake-up call for him in his career, both on and off the field. And he said as much today. And I agree with Luke. I thought he handled the press conference today. I think it was 21 minutes. I mean, it was a long time spending with reporters. And the more he talked, you could sense the freer he got, the more expansive he got in his answers. It's almost like this weight was lifting off of his shoulders after having to endure it for a year and a half.
Rod, the Saints seem to be kind of preparing for this situation. Just what you've seen through camp so far, do you think they're going to be okay for 3 games without Kamara?
I do. And, the thing about it is, you look at, had this suspension, obviously it hadn't played out in courts yet, but had this suspension happened last year, I don't know if they would have been as prepared because, last year, you have Mark Ingram and Dwayne Washington as your running backs. This year, you have Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams. So I think they are better prepared for it, and it only been 3 games, and that definitely helps this team win. And just kind of going back to something Jeff said, this is something that Alvin's had to deal with, and he's been carrying it on his shoulders for, since last February of 2022. So it's been a long time, and he's just been wanting to get – you could tell today that he did want to get all this off his chest, and, he was able to. And, a lot of times people do these press conferences, and they have this – they say all the right things that you want to hear. But you could tell with him that he was really sincere and genuine with everything he said. I don't think any of us thought that he was just – it's just some PR stunt. He really seemed remorseful about what happened.
Yeah, I'll go right back to you, Rod. Kendre Miller, is he somebody that you've seen through camp that looks like he can fill that role as a versatile back that can catch the ball out of the backfield?
I think he can. He's a guy that, even going back to rookie minicamp when he wasn't even practicing. The first time I saw him walk on the field, just looking at his physique, I was like, man, this guy's is going to be something special. And then, we've seen flashes of it, already in training camp. So I do think he'll do well. I mean, obviously he's not Alvin Kamara yet, but I think he has a guy. This is a guy who I think when Alvin Kamara decides to stop playing football, I think the Saints have a guy that can probably fill those shoes when he leaves.
I do kind of want to piggyback on that. They're going to miss Alvin, right? I think 3 games without him is going to hurt. He's a really, really good player, and I think I've been really encouraged by some of the stuff they've been doing with him in training camp. I think maybe we could see a little bit of a reprisal of his old role where he's not getting slammed in the line 25 times a game, and instead he's more of a pass catching threat out of the backfield. But I do think they have some guys who can kind of fill that a little bit while he's gone. I think we've seen a lot, like Kirk Merritt as a former collegiate wide receiver who they've been playing at running back. I think he can handle some of the choice routes that Alvin runs out of backfield. And I think they've been frankly moving Rashid Shaheed around a lot, and I think they could try to plug him in on some of those plays. Whether it's running routes out of the backfield or just kind of moving around where he is in the field. I think they can recreate some of that. It's just not going to be to the degree that Alvin Kamara does it.
Jeff, Cam Jordan gets the deal. I think everybody was kind of expecting it, but just your reactions to them getting this ironed out.
I think it's a great story for the organization. It's great for Cam Jordan and his family. This is a guy that there was a quote the other day Dennis Allen had about what he tells the team, and he says it's not what you play, it's how you play, and that's what I think about when I think of Cam Jordan. He's not the flashiest guy in the world as far as individual athleticism or talent, but just the effort and the effort he puts into every game, every practice, everything he does on and off the field. I mean, this is a guy I know. Steve Gleason had a camp earlier this year during the off time of the summer. Cam Jordan came out and spoke to the kids. You watch him at practice. After practice is over, he's over there signing autographs the entire time. He sprints during these post-practice gassers. He sprints across the other field and puts on an extra 50 yards onto the gasser at the end of practice when he's at age 34. Just the way he conducts himself on and off the field as a leader, that's the kind of guy you have to reward, and that's why he's had such a spectacular career. It's not by accident. It's not by just sheer talent. He's put in the work, and I think the Saints want to reward him and make him a Saint for life. And I think this contract will certainly do that. I know Cam wants to keep playing longer, but by extending him out now, I think now for sure he's going to be one of those rare players that has such a long career in one spot in the NFL and has a chance now to retire with some of these great all-time career numbers on his resume.
That's a 2-year extension for Cam Jordan. They'll keep him with the Saints through 2025. Rod, he seems like he hasn't really aged a bit since he's been with the Saints. Do you think he can kind of keep it going for another 3 seasons?
I think he can. This is a guy who's only made games since he's been in New Orleans, which is really phenomenal. One of the things he talked about today was just the importance of staying with one team. Was he saw his dad do that with the Vikings, Steve Jordan, and he played his whole career with one team. But yeah, I don't think Cam has dropped off a whole lot. I mean, look at what he did last year. I mean, I can't remember how many sacks he finished with, but he had another solid season. And he's a guy, when we talk about defensive ends, we sort of say, okay, we got Cam on this side, and who's on the other side. I mean, that Cam's going to be able to hold his side of that defensive line, hold it down. So I think he has 1-2 good years left in him, I would say.
Yeah, it seems like old news now, but Jon Gruden was also out there this morning. He was here, I guess, what it was May for OTAs and observed and all that, and was able to kind of give his input. Jeff, I think just watching social media, some people a little bit uncomfortable to see him out there in a Saint shirt. He's still kind of a toxic. I say kind of. He is a toxic figure within the league. Jeff? I want your thoughts on this for the Saints to continue. I know he's not in a paid role. He's volunteering to come out there on his own time to do this. I'm sure they're giving him a nice hotel room, all that. Is there any downside to this, Jeff, or is it all just it's worth doing for the good of the offense?
Well, I think it's certainly a question about optics for sure, with the large segment of the fan base, rightfully so. I mean, some of the emails that were revealed in the leaks were pretty reprehensible, some of the comments. And I think the Saints had to take that in consideration before they invited him in. But let's be clear. I mean, Jon Gruden would not be in this capacity as an observer coming in if Derek Carr wasn't the quarterback. I mean, this is really all about his familiarity, his experience with Derek Carr in Las Vegas with the Raiders, and also his experience and familiarity with the Saints offense. I mean, everybody has to remember Jon Gruden gave Sean Payton his start in the NFL. Sean Payton used to sleep on the couch in Jon Gruden's office when they were with the Philadelphia Eagles together. So he's basically an acolyte of Jon Gruden, and this offense is a branch of what Jon Gruden taught Sean Payton. So he knows the offense and he knows the quarterback. That's why he's here. It's a very unique individual, and the Saints are going to have to bite the bullet on some of the public criticism they're getting because it's certainly merited. And I think there's probably some guys in the locker room that aren't too comfortable with it. But in the end, when you talk to players, I think more than anything else, they want someone that's going to help them get better and be successful. And I think that's what Jon Gruden's probably here to try and help with.
Yeah, Luke, it sounds like Gruden was out there watching a frustrated Derek Carr today. What did you kind of take away from today's session with the defense again, kind of getting their number?
Yeah, look, this is a new offense for Derek Carr. He's working with new players, and I think it's just going to take some time. And not every day is going to be perfect. And I think that we need to make that clear every time we're discussing these practices and discussing some of the struggles they may be having. This is all a work in progress. So this is where they get better. But some days are going to be bad. I mean, today was not good, right? There was a 4-play sequence where it was a sack, a ball batted down at the line, an overthrow, and there's one other just a negative play. And after one of those plays, Derek Carr is spiking the football on the ground. So he's frustrated. He's a high-level NFL player, and he wants to be good all the time. But I just think this is part of the growing pains. This is why they do this a month out from the start of the regular season, or farther than a month out. He's got to figure out his place in this spot and how to get this thing going. And it also doesn't help that he didn't have his a couple starting offensive linemen out there. He didn't have Michael Thomas out there today. So I'm not really taking too much from this, but it is interesting. It's 2 practices in a row where he was just clearly out of sorts within this offense.
And look, let me say this real quick, because I think Luke makes a great point. I think this is something we have to watch going forward. I mean, just because this whole offseason has been that way. I mean, when you really think about it, Trevor Penning wasn't here, Cesar Ruiz, Mike Thomas. I mean, most of the injured guys on this team were offensive players. So when Carr was here in the OTAs, there were a bunch of missing parts. And now that the camp has started, you're missing Andres Pete. You had no Mike T. Alvin Kamara wasn't here yesterday. They were missing a Ramczyk wasn't out there. So that's going to be, I think, a continued something we have to watch with all these different moving parts on the offense. It's so highly synchronized. This Saints offense really relies on timing and people being in the right spot at the right time and everybody working together. And when you miss 2 or 3 parts, like Luke said, we can see a day like today where things just misfire.
I'll let anybody jump on this question at once. Is there any concern? Right, it feels like the Saints, all their moves here early in the camp have been adding offensive linemen, and they've obviously had most of their injuries there. It's not been a injury-ridden camp per se, but right now, looking at the offensive line, do you think they feel okay with depth at all?
I'll take this one. Yeah, I think they're fine. I mean, it is some. Anytime a team just starts adding a bunch of players at a position, I think it is something that bears watching. But when you really think about it, I mean, they're in a position right now where Andres Pete, who started for him for like, I don't know, 9 years, is probably their sixth offensive lineman for him right now. And I think, I think they're in a decent spot. They've got a lot of guys who played a bunch of football as depth pieces right now. It's just, to me, when I see them adding somebody like Trey Turner or Max Garcia, they're grappling with the reality of playing in the NFL, where the reality is you're probably going to play a lot of offensive linemen in a given season. It's a pretty high attrition rate at that position with guys getting hurt, and we've seen that a lot over the last couple of years. I think they just don't want to be stranded in a bad position like they have been in recent seasons.
Yeah, Rod, getting Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's obviously been super consistent, but whether it's Anderson, Turner, are they going to be able to, whoever's on the other side, are they going to be able to take some pressure off of Jordan?
I think so. I mean, I think Carl Grants is playing really well. I think Payne Turner's going to, if he can stay healthy, I think this may be the year that the Saints get a chance to see what they thought they were going to see when they decided to drop him in the first round. So I'm not really as concerned about the defensive ends. The interior, I think, is what we probably don't know much about, just because so many new pieces there with Shad Toll and they now. So you put some new pieces in there. You want to see how those guys do. And to me, that's the biggest question mark for the team is the defensive line. And they've looked pretty good, I think, in practice. But you want to see how that carries over to the games.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I'll pose one question that each one of y'all can take turns answering. Who's the one guy that nobody's talking about right now that maybe through the first couple of games of the preseason that people will know more about?
Who wants to go first?
I'm going to give this to Dunk because I think I'm going to guess at who Dunk's guy is.
Oh, no, you don't. Who you think I'm going to say? I was getting ready to steal Rod's guy, but I feel like if I steal Rod's guy, then we're going to all be looking for another one. Look, I am most intrigued. Everyone's been talking about Jake Haener, right?
Yeah, I knew you were going to go there. I was so good.
So it's not. It doesn't really quite fit the answer you're looking for. But Jake Haener looks like a guy that's been in the league like 4 or 5 years. I mean, I'm kind of amazed at how quickly and seamlessly he's moved into that role. And more than the physical talent of, he's very accurate and mobile and makes almost every throw. More than that, it's the confidence he shows. I mean, this guy looks like, he's ready to go out there on Sundays and lead the team. Now, I know he's a rookie from Fresno State. I'm not getting ahead of myself. It's just the way he carries himself in the huddle with veteran players 4 or 5 years older than him, and he's looking them right in the eye, and you can tell. I mean, this is just a natural leader, and I think they might have gotten themselves a steal. I don't know if he'll ever be a starting quarterback. It's way too early to know. I mean, we're talking about 2 weeks into his first NFL training camp. He's going to get better and better as the reps mount up, but I think he could easily – at the floor of his development, be like Chase Daniel, a solid backup for 10 or 12 years in this league. Just the way he goes about his business has been very impressive.
Luke, who's your guy?
I'm going to let Rod go.
I'm going to switch it up. I know you thought I was going to say DeMarco Jackson, that's kind of who I was leaning towards.
Yep.
He's a guy that's been given – I think he gives his teams – he's made some plays. He gives his team some depth at linebacker, which I think they desperately need behind Mario Davis and Pete Werner. So that's who Luke thought I was going to say, but I'm going to go with Rashid Shaheed just because I think he's had a great camp. He gets so many targets. I mean, you can tell this is a guy who's made that leap from year one. I mean, he had a good season last year, but I think in year two, I think he's got a chance to be really special, and they're going to do whatever they can to get the ball in his hand.
That's not that under the radar, but I'll allow it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Look, I was actually
and Chris Olave, so the number 3 guy.
I shouldn't have let Rod go because I was going to say Shaheed, and I was going to say it does count as under the radar because I think he's going to have a much bigger role in this offense this year. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's like not like he's going to catch 90 balls or whatever, but I don't think he's just going to be, take the top off of defense 2 or 3 times a game and do something special. I think they're going to feed him the ball. So I think we're going to see a bigger year out of him. I think that counts. All right, I'm going to go with a truly under the radar guy, and I'm going to go with Ugo Amadi. I wrote about him in my observations today. He's a guy that probably not a lot of Saints fans are familiar with. They brought him in this offseason. I think that he was one of the guys they signed in like January or something like that. But he'll stand out because he wears number 0. He's taken advantage of that new NFL rule. And I tell you what, man, I don't think he's going to like be like a starting player on this defense. And it still remains to be seen whether he's going to make the roster. But I am looking forward to seeing what he does in the preseason because, I think he's going to step into this role they've had in the last couple of years of guys who can play deep safety, who can play dime, and be like a versatile sort of defensive back. Maybe kind of like PJ Williams at the corner play, or maybe Justin Evans, who played a lot of football for him last year. I can see Amadi filling into that role and adding some juice on special teams as well. I mean, he's even back there fielding punts today. So he's a guy they're putting in a lot of different spots. He's a guy I'm sure, unless you're just a diehard Saints fan who's been out there for every training camp practice, watching very closely, you probably have not heard of at all. But he's spent a lot of time in the NFL. He's played with the Seahawks. I think he was with the Chiefs last year. And, I think he's making a little bit of a name for himself here. And I'm kind of curious to see what he does in the preseason.
I want to follow up Jeff's Haener mention by asking, when's the last time the Saints drafted a quarterback? You could sit here after, say, 8 or 9 practices. Ooh, I think they got a guy.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, good.
That's the good Jeff question.
I don't know. I mean, because the only 2 they drafted in the last 20 years and beyond the late rounds were Garrett Grayson and Ian Book. And neither one of them, I think, ever showed this kind of potential this soon. Haener looks like he's made for this kind of offense. I think it's a perfect fit for him in a lot of ways. And so I think it was a good scouting job by the Saints, identifying a guy that fits their system, but I also think this guy's wise beyond his years and fully understands the quarterback position, what goes into it. He seems like the kind of guy that probably goes home at night and just like studies the film and the tape and the playbook. I mean, I don't think he's doing much else. He just eats, sleeps, and breathes it, but understands also the position, what's required of it at this level. It's almost like I've had coaches before say, the quarterback of an NFL team is like a CEO, and I think that's the way he attacks his job, thinking of it in that regard.
Yeah, I think I think the Saints took full advantage of everybody else in the NFL being worried about his stature and the quote unquote arm strength. I don't think that matters to Haener. Like, he goes into there thinking he's the dude on every play. It's really fun to watch. It's fun. Like, he is a little guy, but you could not tell by watching him play.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate y'all taking the time on what had to be one of the busier training camp days we've had in a while. That was a lot going on today. So I appreciate y'all taking the time, and we'll be back here next week, maybe doing as many as 2 episodes next week. Zach will be back, and we'll let y'all know whenever we'll set a little reminder usually whenever we have a podcast coming that day. But thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next week on the Saints Insider Podcast.